Welcome to the worked answers for the Edexcel non-calculator foundation paper from June 2013. Now for this paper, there is no use of a calculator allowed, which means that it's very important that you show your working out. As in every maths exam, there is a formula sheet which you may or you may not need to use. Just remember it's there if you need it. Okay, we must answer all questions, write your answers in the spaces provided. You must write down all stages in your working and you must not use a calculator. So question number 1. Here are 4 triangles, A, B, C and D. One of these triangles is an equilateral triangle. Write down the letter of the equilateral triangle. Well, the word equilateral, it means all sides equal in length. So if we look at our 4 triangles, we can clearly see that triangle B is the equilateral triangle. So the answer is triangle B. Measure the size of the angle marked X. Now for this, we're going to need our protractor. So if I take my protractor, I need to make sure that the center of the protractor is exactly on the corner of the angle, the vertex of the triangle. Then I start from 0 and I measure round in the mouth of the angle and I keep going until I hit the line at the other end and the angle is 118 degrees. So I need to write that as my answer, 118 degrees, the symbol's already there. And when we come to measure the length of the line EF, give your answer in centimetres, measuring from the very end of the line to the other end of the line, exact as you can, you should get 10.5 centimetres. Question 2. Anne works in a sandwich shop. The dual bar chart shows information about the sandwiches sold. So we've got ham sandwiches, egg sandwiches and cheese sandwiches, both on white and brown bread. Write down the total number of cheese sandwiches sold. So we go to our cheese bars. You can see that they're both 6 sandwiches. So we've got 6 on white and 6 on brown. So 6 add 6 is 12. More white bread sandwiches were sold than brown bread sandwiches. Work out how many more white bread sandwiches. So we need to work out the value of each of our bars. So we've got 11 ham on white and we've got 10 ham on brown. We've got 11 egg on white and only 3 egg on brown. So if we look at our white bread sandwiches, so white bread, we've got 11 plus 11 plus 6. And that gives us 28 sandwiches. On brown bread, we've got 10 plus 3 plus 6. So 10 plus 3 plus 6 gives me 19 sandwiches. Now to work out how many more white bread sandwiches were sold, I need to do a little bit of subtraction. 28 white bread, take away 19 brown bread sandwiches, leaves me 9 sandwiches. So my answer is simply 9 more. Question 3. The table shows some information about 6 caravans in a holiday park. So here's our table full of information. And the first part of the question asks us, write down the number of caravans that sleep 6 people or more than 6 people. So we're looking for caravans that sleep 6 or more. So 8 is more than 6, 6 is one that we need, and that's the only 2. So there are only 2 caravans that sleep 6 people or more than 6 people. Part B, write down the names of the caravans with a sea view and a DVD player. So we're looking for ones with a sea view, but it must also have a DVD player. So there's one there, because we've got a yes and a yes. Another one there, because we've got 2 yeses one under CV, one under DVD player, and it looks as if they're the only two. So the two answers I need to write down are seal and puffin. Now Mike wants to hire a caravan that sleeps exactly 4 people. Work out the difference between the highest weekly hire price and the lowest weekly hire price he could pay. So we're looking for caravans that sleep exactly 4. So we've got seal, heron and pearl. Now the highest weekly price out of those 3 appears to be seal at £579. So £579, take away the cheapest one out of those 3, which is pearl at £449. So if we subtract those two, now I'm just going to use the column method for my subtraction. 9 take away 9 is nothing, 7 take away 4 is 3, and 5 take away 4 is 1. So the difference between the highest and the lowest weekly hire price is £130. Now there's 2 marks for that question. The examiner will be looking for some working out. Each caravan has a width of 12 feet. Use 1 foot equals 30 centimetres to work out the width of a caravan. Give your answer in metres. Okay, so 1 foot equals 30 centimetres. I need 12 feet. So if I look at my feet side, to get from 1 to 12, well, I know that 1 times 12 gives me 12. So I must multiply the other side by the same number. 30 times 12. Well, let's just move to the side. 30 times 10 is 300, and 30 times 2 is 60. You can see that I've split my 12 into a 10 and a 2 to make it easier. And then I can simply add together my 2 answers. So 300 plus 60 is 360. So 30 times 12 is 360, and not forgetting the centimetres. Now it does want my answer in metres, so I need to make sure here that I convert to metres. Well, 300 centimetres is 3 metres, so 360 centimetres is simply 3.6 metres. Question 4. At 7 a.m. the temperature was minus 3 degrees Celsius. By noon the temperature was 11 degrees Celsius higher. Write down the temperature at noon. Okay, so we've got a temperature of minus 3. It's 11 degrees higher at noon, so I'm moving to the right because we're getting warmer. Now if I go from minus 3 to 0, I need to add 3, which leaves me another 8 degrees, because 3 add 8 gives me my 11. So minus 3, 11 degrees Celsius higher would take me up to 8 degrees Celsius. By 9 p.m. the temperature was minus 5 degrees Celsius. By midnight the temperature had gone down by 7 degrees. Okay, so here's my 0. Now we're down here at minus 5, and it's gone down the temperature by 7. So I'm going, I'll just extend that there. So I'm going to the left. It's getting colder. I'm going down by 7 degrees, so I'm taking 7 degrees off. Well, minus 5, take away 7, takes me right down to minus 12 degrees Celsius. Question 5. There is enough space for 80 boxes of cornflakes in a stockroom. On Monday, there are 65 boxes of cornflakes in the stockroom. On Tuesday, 17 boxes are taken out of the stockroom, and on Wednesday, 29 boxes are put into the stockroom. Work out how many more boxes of cornflakes can now be put into the stockroom. Okay, so for this sort of question, we need to set it out so it's easy to follow. So I'm going to write Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now on Monday, it tells me there are 65 boxes. On Tuesday, 17 boxes are taken out. So on Tuesday, I need to take away 17, which leaves 48 boxes. Now on Wednesday, 29 boxes are put in, so I'm adding 29. So to my 48, I'm adding 29, which leaves 77 boxes at the end of Wednesday. Now, we're told that 80 boxes of cornflakes will fit in the stockroom. So if I take my 77 from my 80, it tells me that there are 3 more boxes that can be put into the stockroom. Question 6. Here is part of a railway timetable. So here's our table, stations and times. Work out how long the 10:13 train takes to go from New Street to Coventry. So I'm looking at this column because this is the 10:13 train. Now it leaves New Street at 10:13 and arrives in Coventry at 10:47. So I'm going to need to work out how many minutes between 10:13 and 10:47. Well, I can do a simple bit of subtraction. 10 take away 10 is nothing. And it appears as if there are 34 minutes. Harry is at Birmingham International. He needs to be at Tile Hill by 11. What time is the latest train from Birmingham International he can catch? So, he's at Birmingham International. So here we are, it's this row. And he needs to be at Tile Hill by 11. Well, we can see at Tile Hill here that he can get in at 10:55. So the latest train he can catch from Birmingham International would be the 10:45. Question 7. Jack is 1.78 metres tall. Amy is 5 centimetres taller than Jack. How tall is Amy? Now what we've got here are 2 measurements in different units, metres and centimetres. So it's going to be a lot easier if I change them to both the same units. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that Jack, yes, he's 1.78 metres tall, and this is also the same as 178 centimetres. Now I can simply add on how much taller Amy is, which is 5 centimetres. 8 add 5 is 13. 7 add the 1 that I've carried is 8. 1 add 0 is 1. So Amy is actually 183 centimetres tall. Now we can give our answer as 183 centimetres or 1.83 metres. And because Jack's height is in metres, I'm going to give Amy's height in metres as well. Question 8. The shaded shape is drawn on a grid of centimetre squares. Find the perimeter of the shaded shape. Okay, so we're looking for the perimeter, so we're looking for the distance all the way round the shape. So I'm just simply going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So my answer is 14, and remembering that we're dealing with centimetres. So I must remember the units. There's 2 marks for that question. One will be for the answer and the other will be for the units. Don't forget them. On the grid below, draw a square with the same area as the shaded shape. Now the word area is telling me I need to look at the space inside the shape. Now this shape has an area of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the area is 9 centimetres squared. Now to draw a square with an area of 9 centimetres squared, I know that it simply has to be 3 centimetres by 3 centimetres. And that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 centimetres squared. Question 9. Write down the coordinates of the point A. Here's my point A. Now remember, coordinates are always given as x and y values. The x is along the corridor and the y is up or down the stairs. We always start from the origin, so from the centre of my axes. So for the coordinates of point A, I'm going 2 to the left, so my x coordinate is -2, and I'm going down to -3. So my y coordinate is -3. On the grid, mark with a cross the point with the coordinates 5, 2. Label this point B. So remember, along the corridor and then up the stairs, because in this case it's +2, so it's up the stairs. So starting at the centre, go along 5 and up 2. Mark it with a cross and label it point B. On the grid, draw the line with the equation y equals 3. Now this simply means that my y coordinate, so I've got my x and my y, but my y coordinate must always equal 3. So if I was to plot 0, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3, and so on, we can see that the line y equals 3 is simply a straight line, and you will draw yours with a ruler, that passes through 3 on the y-axis. And then we can label that y equals 3. Question 10. Farida has 4 types of fruit: bananas, apples, pears and oranges. Farida is going to choose 2 different types of fruit. Write down all the possible combinations of fruit she can choose. Now to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to give it a key. B for bananas, A for apples, P for pears and O for oranges. So, starting with bananas, she picks a banana, she could also pick an apple. She picks a banana, she could also pick a pear. She picks a banana, she could also pick an orange. Now, if I move to apples, if she picks an apple first, she could pick a banana, but we've already done that. We've got bananas and apples there. So if she picks an apple, she could pick a pear. If she picks an apple, she could pick an orange. And then if she picks a pear first, well, she could pick a banana, but we've got that here. She could pick an apple, but we've got that there. So the only other fruit that she could pick that we haven't already done is an orange. So you should find that you end up with 6 different combinations. Question 11. Here are the cost of pens in 2 shops. Shop A, 3 pens for £2. Shop B, 5 pens for £3. Mrs. Evans wants to buy 30 pens for the cheapest possible cost. Which shop should she buy the pens from? You must show all of your working. Now this question's got a little star next to it, which means they're going to look for working out. It's worth 4 marks, so simply putting an answer wouldn't get you 4 marks. So we need to show working out to make sure we get maximum marks possible. So let's take shop A. Now if 3 pens cost me £2, then Mrs. Evans wants 30 pens. So to get from 3 to 30, I know that 3 times 10 gives me 30. So I must do the same on the other side. £2 times 10 gives me £20. So in shop A, 30 pens will cost me £20. Now in shop B, 5 pens cost me £3. Now again, Mrs. Evans wants 30 pens. And I know that 5 times 6 gives me 30. So I must do the same on the other side. £3 times 6 gives me 18. So 30 pens cost £18. So the cheapest possible cost would be shop B. And that's sufficient working for me to get my 4 marks. Question 12. The diagram shows a car fuel gauge at the start of a journey and at the end of the journey. There are 80 litres of fuel in the fuel tank when it's full, so we can mark on 80 when it's full. Work out how many litres of fuel the car used on this journey. Well, if there's 80 when it's full, one way of approaching this problem is to say, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. My scale is split into 8 equal parts, so therefore each part must be worth 10. So my scale will go up in tens. Now that means that I know that at the start I had 60 litres of fuel, and at the end I had 10 litres of fuel. So 60 take away 10 leaves me 50 litres. On a different journey, the car went 180 kilometres. The car went 15 kilometres for each litre of fuel used. How many litres of fuel did the car use? Well, we know that 15 kilometres takes 1 litre of fuel. We want to know how many litres will it be for 180 kilometres. So effectively we need to know how many 15s go into 180. Well, 180 divided by 15. You probably think you don't know your 15 times table, but you'll know that 10 times 15 is 150. Now I want 180, so I've got 30 left. And I know that 2 times 15 gives me 30. So that's my 180 kilometres accounted for. And from that I've worked out that there are actually 12 15s in 180. So 15 times 12 gives me my 180. Now I need to remember to do exactly the same on the other side. So 1 times 12 gives me 12 litres. Question 13. Now notice that this is starred, which means again we're going to need to show as much working out as possible. The examiner will be looking for clear, easy to follow workings. An ice cream van has this price list. So a choc ice £1.25, a tub £1.15 and a cone 85 pence. Mitch only has these 3 coins. He has no other money. Mitch wants to buy a choc ice, a tub and 2 cones. Has Mitch got enough money? You must show your working. Okay, so he wants a choc ice, so that's £1.25. He wants a tub, so that's £1.15, and he wants 2 cones. Now the cones are 85 pence each. Well, 2 times 85, well 2 times 80 is £1.60, and 2 times 5 is 10. So £1.60 add 10p is £1.70. So my 2 cones would cost me £1.70. So if we include that in our list, and then we can add them up, 5 and 5 is 10, 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 7 is 10, plus my 1 that I carried is 11, 1, 2, 3, and my 1 that I carried, 4. So if he wants all of those, it's going to cost him £4.10. He's got 2, 3, 4. He's only got £4. So has Mitch got enough money? No, not enough money. And your working on the page will show the examiner that you've worked out that he's actually 10p short. You must answer the question by writing no. Question 14. Here are the first 5 terms of a number sequence: 2, 7, 12, 17, 22. Write down the next term in the sequence. Well, if I look at my number sequence, I can see that if I add 5 each time, I get the next number. So I take 22, I add 5, and it gives me 27, which is the next term in the sequence. Explain how you worked out your answer. Well, as I said, I simply added 5 to the previous term. "45 is not a term in the number sequence. Explain why." Well, if I look at the number sequence, we've got 2, 7, 12, 17, 22 and 27. I can clearly see that each term ends in a 2 or a 7. 45 does not end in a 2 or 7. Question 15. Here is a number machine. So my input is multiplied by 6, then I add 3 and I get my output. Complete this table for the number machine. So let's take one that's already done for us. If my input is 2, so 2 goes in, 2 times 6 is 12, plus 3 is 15. So you can see how they get from input of 2 to output of 15. Now let's apply this to complete the table. So if a half goes in, half times 6, or half of 6, is 3, then 3 add 3 is 6. If 3 goes in, now let me just rub out my original so I've got some room. So if 3 goes in, 3 times 6 is 18, add 3 is 21. Now for the last step, let me just remove all of this. For the last step, I'm actually working backwards. I've got the output and I need to know what the input was. So my output was 33. Now if I work backwards, I do the inverse or the opposites. Now the opposite of add 3 is take away 3. The opposite of multiply by 6 is divide by 6. So 33 take away 3 is 30. 30 divided by 6 is 5. And I can check that going the other way. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 3 is 33. So my input was 5. Question 16. Work out 2 times 8 take away 3. Now for this question, I need to consider BODMAS. This tells me the order that I have to do things in. Brackets first, then orders, which are powers, then division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So I look at my calculation. Do I have any brackets? That's the first thing that I need to consider. Yes, I do. So I do those first. So 8 take away 3 is 5. So I end up with 2 times 5. And then of course I'm only left with multiplication. And 2 times 5 is 10. 3 squared plus 4 times 5. So I look at my BODMAS. Any brackets? No. Any orders? So there are any powers in there? Yes. I've got 3 squared. Now 3 squared isn't 3 times 2, it's actually 3 times itself, so 3 times 3, which as we know is 9. So I'm now left with 9 plus 4 times 5. I move along. Any division? No. Multiplication? Yes. So my multiplication is the next thing that I do, and 4 times 5 is 20. So I'm left with 9 plus 20, which, as we know, is 29. Find the value of 5 cubed. Now, 5 squared, remember, is 5 times 5. Well, 5 cubed isn't 5 times 3, it's actually 5 times 5 times 5. Now, to do this without a calculator, we need to break it down. 5 times 5 is 25. And I'm left with my times 5 on the end. So 25 times 5, well, 20 times 5 is 100. And 5 times 5 is 25. So I've included all my 5s, 25 of them, and I simply add together my two answers. 100 plus 25 is 125. And then the last part of this question, find the square root of 16. Well, the square root you may recognise as being this thing that looks like a tick. And this is asking you what number multiplied by itself gives me 16. Well, we know that 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 4 is 16. So the square root of 16 is 4. Question 17. A ticket for a seat at a school play costs £2.95. There are 21 rows of seats. There are 39 seats in each row. The school will sell all the tickets. Work out an estimate for the total money the school will get. Now the key word, and I've underlined it and now I'm circling it, is estimate. You do not have to work out the exact answer. In fact, this question's worth 3 marks, and if you work out the exact answer, you'd be unlikely to get any. It wants an estimate. So, £2.95, well, we can round that to £3. 21 rows of seats, well, we can call that 20. It's an easy number to work with. And 39 seats, we can call that 40. Now, if there were 21 rows of seats, which we've rounded to 20, and there are, we'll approximate 40 seats in each row, how many seats have we got altogether? Well, we know that 2 times 4 is 8, and we're making our answer 100 times bigger. So there are 800 seats altogether. The school will sell all the tickets, so we know that all 800 seats are going to go. Now we've approximated it to be £3 per ticket. So 800 seats times £3. Well, 3 8s are 24. And we've got 2 zeros here, so our answer is going to be 100 times bigger. And not forgetting the units. So we're going to make approximately £2,400. Question 18. Here is a fair 6-sided spinner. Jake is going to spin the spinner once. Write down the probability that the spinner will land on a 4. Well, there are 6 different numbers, but there's only one 4. So the probability is 1 over 6. Write down the probability that the spinner will land on a number greater than 10. Well, we can clearly see from the spinner that there are no numbers greater than 10, so it's going to be impossible. So therefore, it's a 0. Liz is going to spin the spinner 120 times. Work out an estimate for the number of times the spinner will land on 7. Well, if we look at this, there's only one 7. So there's one 7 out of a possible 6 different numbers. She spins it 120 times. So a 6th times 120. Or we can think of this as 120 divided by 6. Well, we know that 12 divided by 6 is 2. So 120 divided by 6 is simply going to be 20. So the number of times the spinner will land on 7, an estimate would be 20 times. Question 19. 1 kilogram of cheese costs £5.60. Jane buys 200 grams of cheese. Work out how much Jane pays. Well, for this question, it's useful to know that 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. We're told that £5.60 is the cost of 1 kilogram, or 1,000 grams. Now, Jane only wants 200 grams, so she wants a fifth of my 1,000 grams, of my kilogram. So, I know to get from 1,000 down to 200, I divide by 5. I must do the same on the other side. £5.60 divided by 5. Well, £5 divided by 5 is £1. 60 pence divided by 5 is 12 pence. So for 200 grams, it's £1.12. Question 20. Ed has 4 cards. There is a number on each card. 12, 6, 15, and we don't know. We don't know the last one. So rather than have a question mark, I'm going to call that X. It's unknown, so X is a good thing to have on the card. The mean of all 4 numbers on Ed's cards is 10. Work out the number on the 4th card. Now the mean average is when we add them all together and we divide by how many there are. Well, in this case there's 4 cards. Now notice here I've got an unknown because I'm not sure on that last number, but I do know that the mean average is 10 because it tells me in the question. So something divided by 4 gives me 10. Well, I need to remove this divide by 4. So if I multiply both sides by 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1. So in effect, the 4 disappears. But I must remember on the other side to do the same. And 10 times 4 is 40. So now I know that 12 plus 6 plus 15 plus x equals 40. Well, 12 plus 6 is 18, plus 15 is 33. Plus my x gives me 40. Now you can probably tell just by looking at this that the missing number has to be 7 because 33 plus 7 is 40. If I wanted to show my working, I would subtract 33 from both sides. That has the effect of disappearing because 33 take away 33 is nothing. Leaves me with my x, and 40 take away 33 is 7. So my missing number is 7. Question 21. The diagrams show patterns made from grey tiles and white tiles. One of the patterns has exactly one line of symmetry. Write down the letter of this pattern. Okay, so our 3 patterns A, B and C. Let's take each one in turn. Well, looking at this first one, you'll have tracing paper, so you'll be able to see if it's got any reflective symmetry. I can tell by looking at this that if I was to put my tracing paper on or use a mirror, I'd be able to see that it's identical both sides of that line. It doesn't appear to have any other lines of symmetry. I can tell by looking at shape B that it's going to have more than one line of symmetry, and it appears that shape C doesn't have any lines of symmetry. So my answer to part A, write down the letter of this pattern, would be A. Write down the order of rotational symmetry of pattern C. Now for you, you'll have tracing paper. Put your tracing paper on, trace over the shape, put your pencil in the middle and turn the tracing paper and see how many times it fits on itself. You should find that the order of rotational symmetry of pattern C is 2. The diagram on the grid shows a tile in the shape of a hexagon. On the grid, show how the tile will tessellate. You should draw at least 6 tiles. Well, the word tessellate means it's going to fit together and leave no gaps. So I can literally just start by drawing my hexagons. Now, yours will be much neater than mine because you're going to use a ruler. But you can still see that mine fit together and they don't leave any gaps. And I need to make sure I draw at least 6. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to do another one there, and just to finish it off a bit more, I'm going to put my 7th one there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've drawn at least 6 tiles. Question 22. On Monday, Holly walked from her home to school. She stopped at her friend's house on the way to school. On Tuesday, Holly cycled from her home to school. The travel graphs show Holly's journey on Monday and on Tuesday. So here's our Monday's graph, and then below it we've got Tuesday's. Now I've done a double page spread here because I'm going to keep referring back to the graphs. Write down the distance from Holly's home to school. Well, we can see the vertical axis here is distance from home in kilometres. So at the very bottom at 0 she's at home, and then by the time she gets to school at the top of the graph, if we go across, we can see that the distance from home to school is 3 kilometres. Write down how long Holly stopped at her friend's house on Monday. So when she stops, the graph will go flat because she's not moving anywhere. So we can see that it starts to be flat at 10 minutes and finishes the flat part at 15 minutes. So quite obviously there's a 5-minute interval where she stops at her friend's house. Holly took less time to get to school on Tuesday than Monday. How many minutes less? Well, if we look at Tuesdays, we can see that she gets to school, the 3 kilometres, in 12 minutes. On Monday, it took her to get to school 30 minutes. So 30 minutes on Monday, take away the 12 minutes it took on Tuesday, leaves us an 18-minute difference. Question 23. Solve x plus 9 equals 19. Now, x plus 9 is telling me that I think of a number, I add 9 to it, and I get 19. So I need to undo this to give me the value of x. Now, the first thing I should do is subtract 9 from both sides, because 9 take away 9 is 0, which leaves me my x on its own. Because I've done it to the left hand side, I have to do it to the right hand side, and 19 take away 9 is 10. So my answer is x equals 10. Solve 2y equals 17. Well, 2y tells me that I think of a number, I double it, and I get 17. 2 multiplied by a number gives me 17. So to undo this, I need to do the opposite, and I need to divide by 2, remembering to do the same on the other side. 2 divided by 2 is 1, which gives me my y on its own, and 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. So my answer is 8.5. Solve w divided by 4 equals 8. So this is telling me that I think of a number, I divide it by 4 and I get 8. Now to undo this, I need to do the opposite, so I need to multiply both sides by 4, because if I multiply by 4, 4 divided by 4 is 1, which gives me my w, and 8 times 4 is 32. And I can check this because 32 divided by 4 does give me 8. Now this last part, expand 3 and then 2 plus t in brackets. We're just going to write this in a different way. We're not going to get a single number answer like we've done for the other 3. Remembering with brackets that whatever's outside the brackets must be multiplied by everything that's inside. So I do my 3 times 2, and I also have to remember to do 3 times plus t. So 3 times 2 is 6, and then if we imagine this as a tomato, and I'm saying that I've got 3 of those tomatoes because I'm doing 3 times t, I end up with 3 tomatoes. So my answer is simply 6 plus 3t. And all I've done is I've rewritten the question, I've expanded it so that there are no brackets. Question 24. There are 40 people at a meeting. Each person travelled to the meeting either by car or by train. 13 of the people are male, 10 females travelled by train, 8 males travelled by car. Work out the total number of people who travelled by car. Now for a question like this, it's a lot easier if we put our answer into something called a two-way table. So the first thing I'm going to do is construct a table. There we go. And along the top I'm going to have male, female, and then our total. And down the side I'm going to have train, car, and total. So let's fill in what we already know. So 13 of the people are male. So if I look at male, going down, I know that the total males are 13. 10 females travelled by train. So females and train is 10. And 8 males travelled by car. So in my male column, I go down to car and I know that's worth 8. So that's the information that I know, or there is one other thing, I know that there were 40 people at the meeting. So the grand total, so in the bottom right hand corner, I know that that's worth 40. So let's start with the male column. Well, if there were 13 males in total and 8 of them went by car, that must mean that 5 of them went by train, because 5 plus 8 gives me my 13. Now looking across the train row, 5 males went by train, 10 females went by train, so the total is 15 people went by train. Then I know that looking down the total column here, if the grand total is 40 and 15 went by train, that must mean that 25 went by car, because 15 add 25 gives me my 40. Then looking across the car row, 8 males went by car. The total people who went by car is 25, so that must mean that 17 females went by car, because 8 plus 17 gives me my 25. And then finally, I can double check the females, because we've got 10 females went by train and 17 by car, which gives me 27 females. And then I can just check, because the total along the bottom, 13 add 27, does in fact give me 40. So my table works, it's all correct. Now to answer the question, work out the total number of people who travelled by car, I simply look across the car row and I can clearly see that 25 people travelled by car. Question 25. Now this question is starred, which means the examiner will be looking for working out that's well structured and easy to follow. Work out the size of the angle marked X. Give reasons for your answer. Okay, so we've got a triangle. Now looking at this triangle, I can see that two sides are the same length, and that's what these two little dashes mean, and one side appears shorter. So the first thing that I notice is that it's an isosceles triangle. Now, because it's an isosceles triangle, it means it has a line of symmetry down the middle. That would tell me if this is 65 degrees on the left, then it would be 65 degrees on the right, because it's mirrored. So my second fact that I need to write down is that it has a line of symmetry. And from that, I know that it has two angles the same. Now another fact that I know is that in every triangle, all the angles add up to 180. So all angles add up to 180 degrees. Now that helps me out, because if I do my 65 plus 65, that gives me 130 degrees. So I know that this angle at the top, the X that we're looking for, has to be whatever's left to take me up to 180. So a simple bit of subtraction, 180, take away 130, which is my bottom two angles, leaves me 50 degrees, and that is the size of angle X. Question 26. Translate shape P by the vector 5, -2. Now the word translate, it simply means to slide. So I'm going to slide this shape using this vector. Now the vector is very similar to coordinates. One of the values is the X value and one of them is the Y value. In a vector, they are always X on the top, Y on the bottom. And when X is positive, it means I'm going to slide to the right because it's positive. And if Y is negative, it means I'm going to slide downwards. So my shape P, I'm going to slide 5 squares to the right and 2 squares down. So we take our shape and we pick any point on the shape, and I'm going to pick the top left corner. I'm going to slide that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares to the right, and then 1, 2 squares down. Now the most important thing is that my point on my original shape becomes the same point on the new shape. So I can then draw in what my new shape will look like. It's identical to my original, but just in a different position. And I can double check this. If I take this point, for example, and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 down, I end up with exactly the same point on the shape, but in its new position. And if I wanted to label this new shape, I would simply call it P and put a dash to show that it's a new shape in a different position compared to the original. Now for this part of the question, we need to describe fully the single transformation that maps shape A onto shape B. So as a reminder, there are 4 different transformations that can occur. We've got translation, which, as we've just done in the previous part of this question, means to slide. We've got enlargement, which can be to make bigger or to make smaller. We've got rotation, which is to turn a shape, and we've got reflection, which, as you'll have done many times no doubt, is to reflect a shape using a mirror. Now, a good way to remember these is actually think of the name Terry, T-E-R-R-Y. Obviously the Y we don't need to use, but it will help you remember the 4 different transformations. So in this case, A is transformed onto B. Now I can clearly see that I've not slid the shape across because it's actually upside down. So it's not a translation. The shape hasn't been made bigger or smaller, so it's not an enlargement. It looks as if, to me, the shape has been turned. So I would go with rotation. It isn't a reflection because if I was to put a mirror between the two, the shape would not be correctly reflected. So the first thing we can do, and that would give us 1 mark, is write down that it's a rotation. Now the second thing you need to do is you will need to put your piece of tracing paper over the 2 shapes, trace shape A, and then put your pencil on different points and turn the tracing paper until it maps exactly onto shape B. You should find it's a rotation 180 degrees. I don't need to give a direction because 180 degrees is simply half a turn, and your pencil should have been at 0, 1. So my answer is rotation 180 degrees about 0, 1. Question 27. Mr. Mason asks 240 Year 11 students what they want to do next year. 15% of the students want to go to college, 3/4 of the students want to stay at school. The rest of the students do not know. Work out the number of students who do not know. So, it would be useful for us to know how many students want to go to college and how many students want to stay at school. And whatever's left will be our students who do not know. So the first thing I need to do is effectively work out 15% of 240. So 15% of my total number of students. Now I'm going to split this into a 10% and a 5%. I haven't got a calculator, so I'm going to work out 10% first, which I can do in my head, and then halve it to get 5%, and then I'll be able to add the 2 together and it will give me my 15%. So to work out 10% of something, we simply divide by 10. So I take my 240 students and I divide them by 10 and I get 24 students. Now 5% is half of 10%, so all I need to do is halve my number of students for 10%, which gives me 12 students, and that will give me the number of students for 5%. Now if I add up my 2 percentages, I get 15%, so I need to do the same with my students. 24 add 12, well 4 add 2 is 6, and 2 add 1 is 3. So 15% of my 240 students is 36 students. Next, we need to find out 3/4 of 240. Well, there are several ways to do this. One way is to first of all find a quarter. Now, to find a quarter of something, we simply divide by 4. So 240 divided by 4 gives me 60 students. Now, to find 3/4, well, I've already found 1/4, that's 60 students. So to find 3/4, I'm simply going to take my 60 students and I'm going to multiply it by 3. So 60 students times 3 gives me 180 students. So 3/4 of 240 is equal to 180. So if I take my 240 students and I subtract from that my 36 students, which was the 15%, and also my 180 students, which was the 3/4 of my 240 students, it's going to leave me 240 take away, well, 36 plus 180 is 216. So 240 take away 216 leaves me 24 students left. So the amount of students that do not know is 24. Question 28. The diagram shows a garden in the shape of a rectangle. All measurements are in meters. The perimeter of the garden is 32 meters. Work out the value of x. Now, because my garden is a rectangle, I know that if the right-hand side is x plus 6, then the left-hand side will be x plus 6. If the top is 4 plus 3x, then the bottom is exactly the same length, so it's going to be 4 plus 3x as well. Now, to work out the perimeter, I'm looking at adding up the length of all the sides. It's the distance all the way around, remember. So I'm going to start on the left-hand side, and firstly I'm going to deal with all the numbers that appear on each side. So on the left-hand side I've got a 6, on the top I have a 4, on the right-hand side a 6, and along the bottom another 4. Now if I add those up, I get 6 plus 4 is 10, and then another 10, which gives me 20. Starting on the left-hand side again, I'm now going to look and deal with the x's. Well, I've got an x there, I've got 3x on the top, on the right-hand side another x, and along the bottom a 3x. So I've got, well, there's 4 x's there and 4 x's there, so altogether I've got 8x. So my perimeter in terms of x is 8x plus 20. And I know, because I'm told in the question, that that is equal to 32. So I've ended up with an equation with x on one side to solve. Now when I solve this equation, remember, whatever I do to one side I have to do to the other. It must stay balanced because there's an equal sign in the middle. I'm going to remove everything on this left-hand side and just be left with my x. So the first thing I'm going to take away is my 20. I'm going to subtract 20 because 20 take away 20 is 0, which will leave me my 8x. Now because I did it on the left-hand side, remember I have to do the same to the other side. So 32 take away 20 is 12. Now I've got 8x's, I only want one of them. So to undo my 8 times x, I'm simply going to divide by 8, remembering to do the same on the other side. Now 8 divided by 8 is 1, which leaves me my x. And 12 divided by 8, well, how many 8's go into 12? Well, 1 goes in, and then I'm left with 4. Now 4 is half of 8. So my answer is x equals 1.5. Question 29. On the grid, draw the graph of y equals a half x plus 5 for the values of x from -2 to 4. Now here's our grid, and what we need to do is generate some coordinates to be able to plot some points and then join them with a straight line. Now we're given our x values for the coordinates, but we will need to work out the y values. So to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to draw a table. So there's my table, and I'm going to have x on the top and y underneath, because remember coordinates are always x and y, so we need a value for x and a value for y. Now the values for x that they give are -2 up to 4. So I need to make sure that all of those are in my table. Now to make it easier, I'm just going to divide it off so we don't get the y coordinates confused. Now, it's a lot easier with something like this if we start with the positive values of x. I need to replace x in my equation with the value 4. So, what I'm going to do is just at the side here, the first one, I'm just going to show you how it works. So if I take my equation y equals a half of x plus 5, and I'm going to substitute in place of x the number 4. So y equals, now I've got a half times 4 plus 5. Well, a half of 4 is 2, and I've got to remember to add on my 5 at the end. So I end up with y equals 7. So when x is 4, y is 7. Now if I put 3 into my equation, a half of 3 is 1.5, add 5 is 6.5. If I put 2 into the equation, a half of 2 is 1, plus 5 is 6. If I put 1 into the equation, a half of 1 is a half, plus 5 is 5.5. Now if I put 0 into the equation, a half of 0, well a half of 0 is nothing. But I need to add 5 to that, so nothing add 5 is 5. Now at this point you can probably see that the sequence is going down in halves. So for the negative values of x, I know that I can put my y value as 4.5 because it's a half less than 5, and then it drops to 4 because it goes down a half again. Now here I've got all my pairings. I've got -2, 4, -1, 4.5, and so on. And I need to plot those on my grid. So let's start with -2, 4. So -2 and up to 4, and I'm going to do a little cross. Then -1, 4.5, -1, 4.5, a little cross, 0, 5. And you can probably see that we're starting to get a straight line that appears. So I'm just going to plot one more point so that it'll act as a check. Let's plot 2, 6. So 2 and then up to 6. So when I draw my straight line, it will need to pass through the points that I've plotted. And I continue the line until it gets just past 4 on the x-axis. Now to finish off, we just need to label our straight line. Y equals a half x plus 5. If you found these worked answers useful, please like and subscribe for more videos. Check out the worked answers to paper 2, the calculator paper, on our channel.